Welcome to Jazz After Dark, everyone. How you doing tonight? All is good with you? I hope all is good. We are enjoying a traditional old-fashioned tonight, actually, because of a special deal they had using the Knob Creek Rye whiskey here. So far, so good. Um, and we're going to talk about, speaking of spending money on things here, we're going to talk about some of our debts going on out there. In particular, you've probably seen the headline about credit card debt reaching $1.08 trillion. And that's the headline. And I noticed that when I was kind of reading through a lot of these articles, I'm like, okay, I need more details. I want to know more. Like, is this everyone? Where are they getting this data from? I thought there's only three places you get the data from. And who's paying for all that data? So we'll go through that a little bit. I'll share some other cool things with you. Where we're going to get this from, if you're curious, is from the New York Fed. So the New York Fed actually does this here. I probably could show it on the screen. There we go. And what they do is put out their quarterly household debt and credit numbers here. So if you look through it, I won't bore you with a lot of this stuff. Aggregate debt, total debt increased by $228 billion in the third quarter. That's up 1.3%. Hey, we did better than the government, right? Balances now stand at $17.29 trillion and have increased by $3.1 trillion since the end of 2019. That is very much what corporations do. So if you're curious, why'd they do that? We tend to compare current earnings to pre-pandemic earnings because of the big hiccup there, COVID. And so a lot of times you'll see, it's earnings are up 2.1%, but flat compared to 2019. And that's what we're doing. So they did the same thing there. One thing that you'll see, and this is where all the headlines come from, credit card balances are now at $1.08 trillion, and they've increased by $48 billion. So the total revolving debt that we took on there was up about 4.7%. Still better than the government. So we're doing okay. This is not going to be a pick on you video, right? It gives everything else, auto loan balances and everything. You can kind of go through if you want to read through some of these things. We cover originations. Delinquencies are important, by the way. If you ever want to kind of study where the economy is at, it's one thing to have large credit card balances. It's another thing if we're not able to pay them. Going back just a few years, there were what I would consider really high credit card balances and but we were not delinquent. We had enough money to pay them. In other words, people were saying, well, if it's only 9% interest only, then I'm willing to carry a balance and let them make a few dollars. No problem. Now that we're at 20+% interest as far as the national average goes, this becomes more of an issue where we want to look at delinquencies. So delinquency rates were up. And as of September, 3% of outstanding debt was in some stage of delinquency. The way we do this is we do newly delinquent, 30 to 60 days delinquent, would be called under 90 days delinquent, and then 90+ days delinquent. So you'll see a few of those reports on there as well. We really want to pay attention to that, because now if interest rates on credit cards are much higher and we now are getting behind, that could become a problem. Side note, you know that we do financial planning for all of our clients that want it, and a lot of that's revolved around debt lately. In Nest Egg, we have a debt portion where we can actually calculate like how you should be paying off your debts and where each dollar should go and come up with a debt plan. It doesn't have to be about retirement all the time. I'm noticing more and more that when we figure out the debt plan on credit cards, there's a nice cute little graph. I don't have one to share with you today, but there's a cute graph that usually goes down as we say, we're going to put a few more dollars towards that one, a few more towards that one. We're going to take from that one and put over here. Right now, what I'm starting to see is those of you that are making the minimum payment or something close to that on credit cards, we're going the other way, right? What's happening is there's no chance you're paying this debt off anytime soon, and the debt actually increases over time. So we're getting that unfortunate, scary little hockey stick there. All right, we've got housing debt and student loans, yada, yada. So as we go through, we'll take a look at a few of these. I'm gonna try to do it like this so it pops up nicely. Total debt, we talked about it there, $17.29 trillion. Love it or hate it, that is a new high there. And then they break it down into what type of debt. Naturally, we're a country who finances our homes, and so you're going to see 70% of that is mortgage. If you really look closely, a slight uptick in the student loan debt, just ever so slightly there. And then if you look at credit cards, also ever so slightly an increase, as well as home equity lines of credit. The number of accounts by type, we see a severe increase here in credit cards, meaning more people are now taking on a new credit card, whereas less people are taking on auto loans. That's flat, actually. I'd say that's pretty flat. And everything else is pretty much flat as well. The number of new and closed accounts. This gets really interesting here because wait till you see how they calculate the data. I wouldn't call it very accurate, although statisticians will say that's enough of a sample size. Anyways, the number of accounts closed within 12 months, less people are closing their accounts, paying them off, transferring them to a lower balance. That means less introductory offers, things like that. So that was interesting to point out there. Quick run through mortgages here. Those that are getting mortgages, we can see in the blue, the majority of those have a very high credit score. Down here at the bottom, sadly, if we look at those of you less than 620, can you even see that? Less than 620, less than 659, not so good. Those of us still shopping for mortgages have good credit scores, and it shows the breakdown of those those scores at origination. Auto loans does the same thing. Again, you can look up this if you like. There are 46 pages. I'm not going to go through all of them there. Let's go back. Credit limit and balance for credit cards and the home equity lines of credits, essentially. So credit limit is the light blue that takes up really from all the way down at the bottom to right there. Look at the bar for just a second. Credit card balance, still not so bad. So we're not maxed out on our credit cards. However, that is increasing and is currently proportionately about equal to where we were just before the before COVID, I should say. So although there's a lot of things you could say negative, all in all, it's not really anything shocking here. Total balance of accounts by how late you are. And this is important because, like I said, delinquencies, a little bit of an uptick there, and that becomes a bit of a problem with high interest rates, 20% plus, and of course, lots of higher balances. But we're going to get to that here in a second. So real quick, we've got total balance by delinquency status. 30 days late, there's a slight uptick as if you compare green to green here in those that are 30 days late. I'm really interested in that because that's your leading indicator, if you can say that's a leading indicator. In this case, it'd be a leading indicator. And there's also an uptick in those that have basically given up, right? We're about to get written off there. All right. I do want to point out the lesson of the video here is, so let me get this set up for you. The lesson of the video is not to focus on headlines. There's a lot of good data in here, but the headlines, don't let them get you, right? Because have you ever read the fine print? I'm going to read a little bit of the fine print with you. This panel that actually does this, okay? Can we go in a little bit? Let's see if I can zoom in. Oh, we can zoom in a lot. Hey, all right. So this panel that puts this together, the New York Fed panel, check this out. Now, this is understandable. I'm not picking on them. We use Equifax for this data. Wait a minute. Isn't Equifax a public company? For-profit public company? They just given this data to the Fed? No, they have to pay for it. It's on their actual balance sheet. They've got to pay for this data. So keep that in mind when I read this to you. The national panel that we pick is random, but it's only a random 5% sample of all individuals who have a social security number and have some credit report, right? An active and stuff on their credit report. Usually age 19 and over, but not necessarily need to be. We also sampled all other individuals that live at the same address. We'll get into that because they're saying, what happens if we want to count them as a household, but what happens if they're married and the debt is joint and we so happen to randomly sample that? Right? So they're doing great. They're accounting for this. Well, anyways, by doing this, the resulting database actually is only 44 million individuals in the quarter. All right. Now, The credit report, we didn't talk about credit reports. Basically, they're saying any credit report information that they get here is good within 3 months. We're assuming that this has all happened within 3 months. There could be closed accounts with zero balances, transferred, paid off, delinquent, or no longer reporting for whatever reason there. All right, that's neither here nor there. Let's look at the cool part. All figures shown in the tables and graphs, which we just went through, are based on that 5% random sampling of people. However, to reduce processing costs, we drew a 2% random subsample. Remember math? So we had 5% random sample. We drew a 2% sample from that. We're not saying of the 5%, we took 2%. No, I think it even tells you here. Yeah. Meaning that the results presented here are really only for 0.1% of a random sample of individuals with credit reports, or in our best guesstimation, 267,000 people, and we've done this since 2017. Now, statisticians may say that's a big enough subsample there, but they're essentially aggregating this data, the credit card side of things, aggregating the data from a subset or from a sampling, how do you say it? A subset of a sampling, right? And so the amount is very low. So when I first saw the, hey, credit cards of 1.08 trillion, I got a little fired up. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, what are you guys doing, man? I want the best for like everybody. I don't want us to be stuck in debt. But then I realized, okay, they're deriving those numbers. It's not 1.08 trillion or 267 into 1.08 trillion. That'd be like $5 million a person on a credit card, right? That's not what they're doing. They're using that data to then derive the bigger and larger number. So we assume it went up based on this little sampling of 0.1% of all people that have a social security number and a credit report with something on it. If you read further, of the 267,000, if those people had a social security number, they did to be in this sampling. If they had a social security number and had a credit report, but on that credit report, all they had was an auto loan and maybe a mortgage or some student loans. Let's say they didn't have credit cards. That's even less people that we're calculating here. So the moral of the story is, don't beat yourself up, first of all, for having, I got $4,000 on my credit card. If you can handle it, we knock it out, we get it done. Let's focus on it. Don't feel like you're somehow in a lot of trouble there. The second thing is, for God's sakes, like the headlines these days are awesome. I'm learning a lot from how to like get people to watch videos and stuff, but the headlines are just that. They're headlines. When you read deeper, you go, okay, there's a slight problem here with the delinquencies. That's a lot of debt, even if they're not even like that close. If they're off by $1 billion, you're like, that's still a lot of debt, right? But still, it's a little bit of a sloppy number. Do you agree? Did I get it wrong? Should we do it again? Let me know. In the meantime, I'm going to enjoy this old fashioned and figure out why this computer's acting a little bit slow here tonight. I don't know. Adios.